This isn't really a scary story that happened to me, but it's a story my mom has told me. Sorry if I'm writing in this all over the place. I'm not very good at organizing stories. When my mom and dad were dating, mom decided to get a better paying job since she recently graduated high school. This was in the late 70s. When she got an interview at an office building, she never specified what exactly the business did, just that it was her job to file papers and deliver stuff to her coworkers. The first thing she remembered being weird about this job was during the day, the interview they wanted her to draw the front of the building from memory. She's not entirely sure why they made her do this. Maybe it was to test her memory, or maybe it was to see how decided she was to the company. Either way, she ended up getting the job. The second weird thing she noticed was her boss. About a month of her working there, it was very obvious that her boss was a dedicated member of Scientology. It didn't really bother her at first until she noticed that he would try to force Scientology beliefs about everyone that worked there. He would especially aggressively if he found out you were Christian or Catholic, she noticed. My mom was still a Christian. She tended to keep her beliefs to herself unless someone asked her about it. The next big and red flag she remembered was her boss would go around specific coworkers, most of them being male, and offer them pills. He wouldn't tell them what the pills or what they did. And the scariest part was some of the workers would just take the pills without any questions or hesitation again. None of this happened to my mom directly, and she felt it was worth sticking with the job just a bit longer for the paycheck. She just assumed she could avoid her boss if she could. The last thing was finally got my mom to quit this job. Her boss suddenly decided one day that he had no problem with people who didn't like certain words, specifically curse words. He noticed my mom would look uncomfortable around certain curse words. He took her into his office, he locked the door, and forced her to sit down in front of him. He then proceeded to scream the curse words in front of her face and claimed he was keeping it until they didn't bother my mom anymore. She said she didn't know how long it went on for, and said it would felt like an eternity when she said she didn't know how long it went on for, but she did it felt like an eternity by before she was finally allowed to leave his office. She didn't even go back to her desk. She just left the office. She just left the office and went to find the phone to call my dad. She said she remembered crying and sobbing to the phone. As she told my dad what happened, my dad encouraged her to quit, and she did it without any hesitation. It took my mom a while to recover from her job. My mom is in her early 50s now, and she's not sure if a man still works there, or if the business is even still operating. She told me that she questions what her boss' next steps would have been if she decided to stay there longer. My fiance or I are currently in our 20s, so this happened around 6 years ago at this point. So we were 14. Her and I had gone to see a movie in Dishes Chapter 3. Being that we were young and the only two in the theater, the movie itself scared the hell out of us purely because of the villain of this movie, referred to as the man who can't breathe. I also remember just feeling strange at that day before, and even more so that after the movie, almost as if see someone had been watching me or something. And I don't really usually get paranoid. Fast forward to a later night, and just for a little more bit of context, my fiance and I used to sneak out of the house, and at the night just hang out with each other. She lived about 4 miles from me. We both had bikes, and about every night or so we would alternate what road to whose house. It was my turn that night, and I left my house around 11:30 just to make sure my parents were asleep before I left. I got there around 12, and we hung out and talked and listened to music for about 2.5 hours, and I decided to leave. On my way back, I saw our car coming, so I decided to take a different route just to try not to pass any cars on the way back. It added probably around 5 to 7 minutes to my trip back home, but it was a back roads, so I left it as more comfortable. That was until I got to the first place I was supposed to turn. I didn't have a light, so I depended on the moon, some few and far between lights coming out from the properties or whatever. When I got to the first turn, I swear in front of me was a man standing who couldn't breathe from the movie. And if you've seen the movie, or him for what matter, you'll understand the amount of terror shot through my body when I saw this. The figure wasn't moving, just standing there, still as a statue. I stopped little ways out and waited for a movement of any sort. Nothing. I thought this was really strange. What was this person doing in the middle of the road? I slowly pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight pointing directly at the figure. Turns out it was a sort of fence decoration, literally a tall round at the top of the statue. I sighed in relief as I felt much better, laughing it off. I made a couple of turns before making it essentially the road that was just before the road to my house. Now keep in mind, as I say this, it was 3 a.m. and I live in a rare rural area, not much around us. I stopped my bike again after hearing another loud cracking noise, a little ways up the road, almost as someone broke a huge branch off a tree. It scared the hell out of me, which then, before I could even think, I saw a figure coming towards me very fast. I panicked and jumped on my bike, dipping into the bushes, breaking the bike with me. Some human size ran past me down the road at the speed of a sprint. Like I said, it was 3 a.m. in the rural area, about 30 minutes drive to the nearest business establishment. There was no logical conclusion that could come to me senses of it due to the fact that it was only just a weird to see anyone else out there at the time, but how fast this thing was definitely unnatural. I watched it disappear into the night behind me. Then I waited for a little while to see if it was going to come back. I ended up waiting for the sun to start to come up. I was honestly horrified. Honest to God, I was always weirded out by gut feelings whenever something bad is going to happen. In a day, it's happened a lot throughout my life, where if I didn't go without my gut, something awful would have happened. I remember feeling that gut feeling before seeing the movie and before going out that night. I don't know what would have happened to me if I didn't duck behind the bushes, but I fear I wouldn't have been good. I'll never know who or what was that sprinting down the road. I recently just lost my phone. It had been pretty rough a month, so I decided to go on Craigslist to get a new one. I ran past an iPhone 8 ad. It was posted by some guy named Dave. The phone was around $200, which was pretty cheap for a 128 gig phone. At first, I found it a bit dodgy, but I eventually convinced myself to reply to the post with my contact details. The guy texted me back in 15 minutes later, followed by 3 pictures of the phone itself. I asked if he would meet up in a public restaurant that was like half a mile from my crib, just to be safe. I asked my older brother to tag along with me, as it would make me feel much more comfortable. The following afternoon, I and my brother went on our way to meet up with the guy. He seemed pretty decent, well dressed, and presented. He said he was from the next town over, and was selling the phone because he just bought a brand new one, and how obviously needed the cash. We did the transaction, then we went all on our way. The story doesn't end there though. A few days later, I'm at my home, minding my own business, when I heard a sound like the 2 small stones hitting my bedroom window. I looked out my window to see no one there. I thought it was just my older brother goofing around as usual, so I kind of brushed it off. I called him down and heard him reply his bedroom window, which was the opposite of my bedroom. It was still bright and sunny outside, so I assumed it must have been the kids in our neighborhood. I then heard the garage door slide open. I didn't hear my mom's car engine run, and besides, she normally signaled for us to open the garage door for her, using her car hooter. Besides, it was a bit too early for her to come home already. I walked towards my brother's room, who was already storming out of his room to fix the mess he had made in the kitchen. We both decided to run down the stairs before hearing what sounded like someone trying to break a door down. It was a door connected to the kitchen that leads to the garage, but why would our mom be trying to break the door down? It probably took us like 6 seconds to realize what was happening. Before, I ran to our house phone to dial 911. My brother grabbed the baseball bat and yelled whoever was out there that there were people in the house and that 911 was on their way. The guy immediately bolted out of the house, running through the front yard and our living room. I looked out my window to see 2 men in black, one in a face mask and one without. My heart nearly dropped when I noticed it was the same guy that stole me the phone a few days back. But how did he remember me? Ensuring no one was following us back home that day. The cops arrived 4 minutes later. I followed by my mom. We told them everything and even gave them the contact information used to communicate with the guy of the exchange, including the phone. Turned out the phone we used got my location by through Find My iPhone. It was never confirmed if the phone was stolen or not, but I later destroyed it and went to buy a new one a month and a half later. I haven't used Craigslist ever since.